Five, four, three, two, one. Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome back to Space Engineers on the Xbox, on the Series X. And this is the next part of the large grid ship build. Well, off camera, I've actually been doing some work on it. If you've been following my channel and you've been looking on my community tab, you may have seen a picture of the newly named Sargasso. And we are indeed on board the Sargasso. If I take you to the rear of the ship, you'll notice that I've been busy inside. I've done some detailing and I've added 3 more gyros so that it turns a little easier. I don't want it to turn like a fighter. I'm not a big fan of larger, heavier ships like this turning as though they are indeed a small fighter. What we've still got our 2 assemblers, we've still got our 2 refiners, we've got our cargo containers, med bay, but we've added some stuff like the kitchen, and we've got some lockers, a weapons locker. I've extended the gravity field on this thing, pushing our field depth to 95 meters, which takes it just past the front of the ship, because if you remember, we now have a bridge instead of the original cockpit design I had. And I've added some lights. These lights here, the corner lights, are really good over the top of doors. The single and corner light, which can be found in amongst the lighting here, and it's the one you want there. Out of all this lot, the corner lights will fit over doors and things. They're quite good. You don't need to go mad with lighting as well. I've added a couple here. I've added the bathroom and the toilet, as you know. The beds. And moving to the front of the ship, we have moved position. And we're going to add a few more bits and pieces. And we're pretty happy with how the thrusters are, so we're going to flesh out some of the controls on the ship to make it so that we can leave grav easier. So what we're going to do, if you look, we've got the thrusters, and we've got the landing gear. I've been busy. I've created custom landing gear using the large magnetic plates, which are very good for that. And what we've got then is, what we're going to do is we're going to add the thrust override system, which we'll add to the 3rd page when we get there. For the time being, we're also going to need to add the connector, and my suggestion would be to add your connector to this particular place here. We have 2 connectors, 1 and 2. You could add both. Remember, the top connector is our connector that gives us ice into the oxygen system, and the other connector is the one that's going to handle all the fuel needs of the ship, from ice to the fuel, as well as uranium for the reactors. So just put them both excuse me, onto your hotbar, switch lock, hold down the direction you want, find the connectors, use switch lock, and we can rename those from the exterior of the ship if we want to make it easier. And then what we want to do is we want to ensure that we've actually got our thrusters where we want them. Now, if you notice, I've got some lighting on the second page. So on the third page, my suggestion would be to put your thrust override and your reverse thrust as well. So if we open up our control panel with the inventory button, move across the control panel, what we're looking for is our thrust group that we want to make. So we're going to have a look at our thrusters, and I tend to just type the word thrust, and you'll see the Sargasso thrusters there. Those are the ones that turn all the thrusters on and off, and we can look at all the thrusters on the ship. You can see there's quite a few. What we're looking for is we have large hydrogen thrusters that are forward. So without messing about, we can actually just make a group out of those straight away by pressing A on the first one, holding down the right bumper, and tapping A and the D-pad until we reach the third one. And then without using the D-pad, remember, don't use the D-pad, flick across the left stick until you hit there. Now, if you use the D-pad, what you'll do is you will potentially hit that thrust override like this. See that? That's now gone to 240 newtons. Those thrusters are now overridden. You can't control them anymore from your cockpit. And unless you notice it, you'll find your ship doesn't fly or doesn't fly as well. So this is why we always use the left stick to move windows. So we're going to call this SARG for Sargasso thrust. And then override. I'm thinking of doing a small video as well on cosmetic design for ships, how to turn a box into something a little more less like a box. So there we go. We've got our large hydrogen thrusters forward. So what we're looking for now is we're looking for reverse thrust. So we can just scan through our group until we see backward. And this is a great way of spotting how to add all your thrusters to a group when you've got a thruster you don't want in the middle. This is why we use right bumper and A. Right bumper lets us keep the group but skip past and select the one that we want. So now we've got our reverse thrust. We're going to ensure there's no more reverse thrusters, making certain, and we want to add those to a group as well. So same deal, left stick, block group, SARG, rev, thrust. And we want to save that off while we're here. So now we can add these to our hotbar. Remember that we have the first page set up with our main thrust on and off, our landing gear switched lock, and our connectors, which we can control from the cockpit. One thing you also want to make sure, actually, while we're here, if we check out connectors, we want to ensure that we can rename them while we're at it. I always like to put the ship name in front, so SARG connector in this case. We're just going to call them connector 1 and connector 2 for now. But they're useful to have their own unique names. It helps if you've got multiple ships docked as well. If you're controlling things, you're not going to trigger by accident a set of connectors and so on. And then while we're here, we just want to look at used for parking. Is this block triggered by the parking signal? No. And change the other connector to the same. Make sure that you're not using the parking signal for that block, so you can trigger them by just pressing them on the D-pad. So if we move across a page by holding down the left stick and tapping B to the third page, we can start to add the important part, which is the thrust override, which will allow us to keep the ship within the speed limit that Space Engineers has. And if you keep it just below the speed limit, you'll use less fuel, basically. It's something that we learned to do ages and ages ago. So we're looking for the thrust override. There it is. So we add that to our group here, and we'll have increased thrust override on the left, and we'll go for the same thing on the right with thrust override, and we'll decrease it on the right. And then on the up direction of the D-pad, we're going to throw our reverse thrust, and we're just going to have that block toggled on and off. And there you go. That's our group setup. One thing you do as well, and one thing I really like to do on a ship like this, and we can put it on the second page, is if we go back into our groups and we look at batteries, we type batteries, you'll see we've got batteries. So if we put all of these batteries into a group, them Sargasso batteries, or Saga batteries in this case. Save it off. And then we could put those onto the D-pad as well. And we can change recharge, on, off, auto, recharge, and so on. What you also want to do as well, if you've got a spare page, or you don't mind putting them, say, on the same place as your thrust controls, create another group. This time, look for your refiners. We just add these to actually we'll call it production. Sargasso prod. We want this like this. Make that group, and then what we'll do is we'll for Zagato production. And we can flick through this long list of components. You can hide these if you so desire by using the little eye symbol. Okay. It's a lot easier that way. So if we've got, hold on, remove this because we no longer want this block group. So just get rid of that. Sargasso production. Click that, and then we want to look down the list, and we want to add to that group. And this is a great way to show you where the things fall in the groups. There's your refinery. And what you want to look for is anything that might be down on production side of things. Now, if I remember rightly, I've only got 2 assemblers on this, so there's nothing in the lower section. So we can easily discount everything else apart from our 2 assemblers, and then just hold down the right bumper again, tap A on both, save the lot off. And what we want to do on here now is find this group, in our list, and toggle it on and off. When we're recharging the batteries, if we turn this off when we're not using it, it'll make it draw less power off the ship anyway, and also make it a lot easier to recharge. So that's our little groups. And if we want to check things, we can switch our thrusters on, go to the external view, and you'll see that I've made some changes to the Sargasso from its original. I've actually completely enclosed the ship now, built out the hull and detailed it off camera. We have our reverse thrust that we can turn off to allow us to coast, and also to keep the ship from trying to decelerate as we leave the planet. But we've also got our thrust override at the back, allowing us to put all the burn we can into those rear engines and then bring it down slowly to allow us more fuel efficiency until we disable the thrust override in general. And then we've got our landing gear underneath. So what I'll do is I'll jump out and I'll show you what I've been up to. Now we've done some grouping and things. We've got the majority of what we want on. Go into the area at the back. Remember, we're using a simple, slightly inefficient airlock in that you will in space lose some oxygen through this system, but not much. We've now got a ladder that allows us to get down, and I have been a bit busy in that I've created a landing gear lift using a piston and some blocks. If you want to know how to create lifts like that, I do have a video up on how to make a simple lift platform, and this is pretty much this, just using piston in a different direction. I've also set up a handy little hidden, or not so hidden, override. Allows you to close it up again so you can see it from the outside. Makes it easier. If you run out of jetpack fuel, you could easily get back on board. But this is the Sargasso as she stands. Got the name on the side. Built out the rear nacelle engines slightly. Done some detailing on the back. Built out the rear thrusters. This is our Hector. One, and the top one will be connected to. I've done some detailing in the underside of the ship as well. Added an ore detector, which I will stick onto the cockpit at some point. Bridge. And then at the top of the ship, I'm thinking what I might do is I may look at adding a little more detail. Might add some fins that come up off the top here. But I kind of like the ship as is. What I want to do though is I want to ensure that we have a way of recharging our vessel bit in the sun. So we're going to add a couple of solar panels here. There, and I think we've got enough room just to add another there. So now we've got some external trickle charge for the batteries, which will help out, especially in space and when landed on planets during the day cycle. We can as well, if we wanted, find a space in the rear of the ship, maybe had a hydrogen engine for battery recharge only. Hydrogen engines are thirsty. They drink ice. They don't drink it as much as they used to. In fact, Keen updated hydrogen engines in that regard, so they don't eat as much fuel. They did the hydrogen rebalance, and if you want to see that, just look up my channel and look at the hydrogen rebalance video that I did. You'll also see that here I actually added a little window. This is the half window inverse you can get, and that is the Sargasso without the paint job. And there's the custom landing gear. It's just some cosmetic blocks around these large magnetic plates. And these large magnetic plates are great because they allow you to stick lights at the bottom around there. I've also added those lights to the cockpit so that you can just literally turn them off and on. That really is the large grid chip. If you want to see how it flies, well, what we'll do is we will take a quick look. So we've got creative on and we've got the fuel. We're going to 1, 2, 3 pages. 2. Add the ore detector. We'll make sure while we're on the ore detector as well, we'll ensure that the ore detector itself is pushing out longer range, 150 meters. You can see it's already picking up cobalt beneath the ice lakes. Always remember that you can tend to find cobalt beneath ice lakes in this game if you're looking for it. So if you find an ice lake, you can usually find that resource. And then you don't need the refiners on. We don't need the batteries on recharge. Spotlights on. The thrusters on. Shut the gear off. And bear in mind, this is quite a heavy ship, and it's meant to be. This isn't your average fighter. It's not a warship. And there's a reason that we have our big thrusters on thrust override. Then all we need to do is turn those off. Off goes this thing. Stars. We can slowly bring down, if we want, our thrust override, just to make sure that we can keep this ship it's starting to fall off now. So if we just keep it there, our thrust will take us quite successfully into space, and it will take a while to do so. That is the Sargasso ship that started out as no more than a box connected to a box and another box, and now we have something in a few short weeks looks like this. Got any questions, or if you just want to reach out via YouTube, feel free, swing by, drop me a comment, join the Facebook group. You can find that link in the description of the video. Hop onto the Discord. It is active, but people tend to play the game more than chat on it. And there you go. That is it. I'm not going to bore you with the whole journey to space. It'll take a while. But suffice it to say that this ship can make it in and out of gravity. You're going to need to be more careful on the return journey. Remember, this is a heavy ship. You're going to have to use the thrusters and be very careful when it comes to landing. Just gently tap the B button on the controller to slowly bring a ship like this down, and be ready to activate the thrusters with A as well to slow yourself. Don't come flying down at a few 100 meters a second, a few 100 feet off the ground, otherwise there is going to be a explosion. And that's it. That's our ship heading off into space. And all I've got time for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. As I said, I'll catch you in the next one. We will probably do some painting. I may do a painting tutorial just to show you how to change the ship colour entirely and then paint different parts of it. The way it's built, it might be that when I paint the exterior, you don't see the same colour on the inside. You might see it in some places, you might not. Until then though, have fun, enjoy the game, stay tuned for more. I'm pretty sure we'll see the update before the end of the year. Kino working extremely hard on this one, and it is a big one. I'm looking forward to reading the notes on it because I have a feeling they're going to be quite large with lots of fixes, lots of new content. I'm pretty excited to see the railgun as well. Yeah, so happy engineering and bye for now.